Today, I would like to talk about the metaphysics of each of the hormones. Metaphysics is the very essence. It doesn't matter to us where hormones are produced, where they're made, or how it happens at the cellular level. The most important thing for us is to understand the metaphysics. Why nature came up with this and what problems it solves with it. You must understand, in nature, nothing happens just because. Everything that every species, every individual does is to try to adapt as much as possible to the environment and increase its chances of survival. We see a variety of successful adaptations, and I want to tell you today about the metaphysics of the main hormones. Prolactin is the hormone through which a man becomes attached to society, and if you don't control who and how they pressure your prolactin, then you will become slaves to the system. It is a social hormone, and that is not just by chance. If a man lacks a sufficient amount of prolactin, he will jeopardize the survival chances of the whole group. Humans are group-oriented beings, and when prolactin is low, a man begins to act destructively towards society. And survival in the wild is only possible in a state of maximum socialization. I killed a mammoth today, we all eat. If this order is disrupted, for instance, if one person is completely devoid of prolactin, he's like, why should I share my mammoth? This will trigger the start of a status competition. And why do you think you cannot share resources with us while we have to share with you? Because I am stronger and better than you. And the group, instead of surviving, it dies because all resources are spent on internal wars. You must understand that there is no difference. Our brain, it cannot fit into its head some complex social culture or something else. It's primal. And throughout human history, those societies won that were able to cultivate a sufficient amount of a civilized part in individual beings. Right now is a very interesting stage in human development. We've gone further. We've started raising super civilized children. And super civilization is, first and foremost, super compliance. And this super compliance, at some point, it becomes harmful. There's no good, there's no bad. Everything has its measure. Super civilization without primal nature is not a blessing. Primal nature is needed and necessary. A human consists of primal nature and of civilization. Civilization without primal nature is dead. It is dead. You know, the speech of a person who has no primal nature but has civilization. I don't know what to do with my life. I seem to have many interests, but I don't know. It's the same with girls. It's unclear what to do or something else. That's just how it looks. It's a complete complex, you see, an absolute set of identical manifestations in a boy who has had civilization instilled in him while his primal instincts have been blocked. That is, civilization is the eyes, it's understanding, it's knowledge. But primality, that's the legs and arms. Primality allows us to move through life, to manipulate the objects around us. Civilization without primality means being unable to earn money, unable to fuck a woman, unable to enjoy life, unable to want. A pathological inability to want. How is the inability to want treated in the modern world? With even more civilization. I'll go to a psychologist, to a psychotherapist, and he will dig even deeper into my abstractions, into my civilization. Primality without civilization is active but foolish. All religions, all teachings, all philosophy, perhaps except for Nietzsche, say that by suppressing the primal within yourself, you should label it as negative, meaning that any thoughts about any sensations connected to our primal origins should evoke and interfere. And the true art of living is achieving complete balance and uniting the primal and civilized aspects. You should always have a weapon. Your primal nature must always be with you, because there will always be those who are more primal. If you're not ready to stand your ground, a well-fed, content person cannot go into battle in business, in science, in martial arts, or in art, against someone who is like a madman keeping himself in an iron grip, and he cannot defeat him. And the art of great champions in sports is to create conditions for themselves in which their body starts to believe that it is once again in a state of deficiency. As the late Steve Jobs said, stay foolish, stay hungry. In other words, to put it in biological terms, periodically create for your brain. Periodically create a feeling in your brain that you're a pauper, that you have nothing. The brain works very simply. The brain spends a huge amount of energy, a monstrous amount of energy. When things are bad, it releases a monstrous amount of energy to find a way to make things good. When things become good, the brain shuts down immediately. The brain, like instantly, you start living well. Based on your ideas of a good life, the brain just shuts the hell off, that's it. It doesn't work, it doesn't need to. And the art of balancing your efficiency while you're on the rise is to create a feeling in your brain. You see, the brain, it's thick-headed. It's impossible to explain anything to the brain. The brain consists of three parts: the ultra-ancient, the ancient, and the modern. Now, abstraction, math, geometry, literature, meanings, that's the neocortex, that's the modern brain. Only humans have this. But the ancient parts make the decisions, the ancient parts react, the emotions are ancient. And you must understand that there is no dialogue with the ancient parts of the brain. You have to influence it directively. Your problem is that you're impotent. You're just a hollow shell of civilization. You don't realize that our ancestors, thousands of generations, millions of people who passed on the spark of life, were people who did things because they wanted to live, they wanted to survive. Now, civilization has given us conditions where we live without any effort of our own. And the art of living in the third millennium is being able to make your brain feel like you're in primitive scarcity, that there's nothing to eat, that you have to hunt a mammoth, that enemies are everywhere. That's when you're alive. Life isn't designed for warmth and fullness. It doesn't understand that. The most moronic idea that's been drilled into your head is that in order to do something, in order to get results, even extraordinary ones, you need discipline, you have to force yourself. That's such bullshit, it's just total nonsense. Well, I just don't have the words to describe how stupid that is. There's only one way to actually start doing something, and that's to be in or create conditions where not doing it is impossible. That's it. All our ancestors, all our predecessors did so much because they had no other choice. They couldn't not do it, they would have died if they hadn't done it. We created civilization, we were born into it, we found ourselves in it. Now we have to learn how to create these conditions for ourselves in a controlled manner. Conditions where doing is easier than not doing. Conditions where not doing is simply impossible. This is what happens to a person every single day, 20 hours a day. This has to be done. I don't want to do this, this has to be done. I don't want to do this. The fundamental property of testosterone, its metaphysics. What is testosterone? Testosterone is the hormone of mutation, the hormone of overcoming. Testosterone is not a reward, it is a tool with which you discover the new. You try new things, you go where no one has been before. Testosterone is not a chest of gold, but a sword with which you carve your way forward. So what is your choice? Do you want to live a dull, unhappy, but stable and comfortable life? Or do you want to take life into your own hands, take a risk, and try? Maybe you'll die, but maybe you'll reach somewhere no one has ever been and find riches no one has ever possessed. This is the fundamental property of testosterone, the drive for the new. It's when fearlessness, the desire for a better life, outweighs the trembling for your own miserable, wretched existence. Think about it yourself. Imagine what it's like to be in the front row, in the vanguard, in a battle. Just imagine what kind of 3-ton metal balls you need to have to volunteer and go in the front row against the enemy. What is the chance of survival there? 0. You are called to the front line to die in battle. Society has always needed and still needs high testosterone men. And now there is a monstrous stagnation of civilization, a halt in scientific and technological progress, a halt in art. Where there is no movement, stagnation arises, and where there is stagnation, there is decay. And that is where we live. We are rotting away in kilotons of identical movies, songs, and the endless rehashing of the discoveries of great people from the past. We can't create anything. We are the most degenerate generation in all of human history, but also the most educated. We know a great deal. A modern 10th grader he is a more educated person than Voltaire and Newton combined. We are very educated, we know a lot. Granted, we can't do a damn thing with all this knowledge, but we know a lot. Somehow, societies all over the world have managed to continually increase and preserve the number of men with high testosterone levels through a sociocultural layer. Everyone knows this thanks to the way Vikings have been popularized in movies, TV series, and games. You take a person and tell him the only way to get to a place with endless food, endless sex, and endless killing of enemies is to die in battle here in this life. Since the brain doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination, to a young guy's brain, this seems like an absolutely awesome deal. Die here once and then fuck for guzzle down eternity. That's a hell of an idea. This is how one would switch off self-pity. In every viable culture that has managed to survive until today, There is a phenomenon of switching off self-pity in men. This came to an end after the Second World War, when people were dying for an idea. One way or another, cultures have always possessed a psychological, emotional, and social code, like the code of Bushido of the samurai, which was instilled into young men for the purpose of switching off their self-pity. As you've probably realized, I'm not a big fan of these methods, because first and foremost, they make a person dependent on whoever instills this idea in them, and make them easily controllable. I have a different code, one that I developed for myself quite some time ago. How did I switch off the self-pity in myself? I simply ask myself questions, which is in fact what I always do. So that's what I'm doing. I ask myself questions. I ask you questions. I asked, why am I not doing this, that, and the other? I know I just need to do it and I'll feel good. I answer myself, well, I'm tired. I have no strength left. I ask myself, if the lives of my loved ones depended on my actions right now, would I be just as tired? No, I would do it. Then I ask myself, am I really that tired, or do I just feel sorry for myself? I realized, yeah, I'm not tired. I feel sorry for myself. I'm saving myself. I'm afraid to overstrain. I'm afraid to get tired, because I know if I get tired, I'll be in a vulnerable position. I'll be less effective, and then they could defeat me. They could kill me. That's how our brain thinks. And I ask myself, why do I feel sorry for myself? Why can't I just unleash all my resources right here and now and reach that full life and enjoy it? And I realized it was a very fuzzy and uncharacteristic answer for me, but it was there. I realized that I had this thought that, oh, I'll have time later. Why rush? Why rush? You can just gradually, without hurrying, reach the same point without overstraining yourself. That's where the catch was. I realized that I had an illusion of the infinity of my life. I realized that I had a lack of understanding, awareness, and feeling of the finiteness of life and the importance of this moment here and now. There is nothing but here and now. There is nothing but here and now. Absolutely nothing. There is no later. Mountains of gold later aren't worth a hut here and now. The needles from this hut here and now aren't worth castles and palaces later. Here, you will never see your children's smiles again. You won't see women, you won't see nature, you won't eat anything ever again. You will disappear. The world goes on as if nothing happened. You are disappearing. That's it. Only by realizing the finiteness of life, its unpredictable end, the unpredictable end of life, do we free ourselves from self-pity. And by freeing ourselves from self-pity, we can allow ourselves to unleash absolutely all the resources of our body and our mind. Here, only here and now, does it make sense to unleash everything we have. Only here and now does it make sense to do your work to the fullest, to grip that barbell, that iron, with your fingers and lift it off the floor, to latch onto your client and get money out of them. Because here and now is the most important moment. The here and now is more important than the best plans, the best laws in the world, or the best books in the world that will come later. That's why I find it so funny when people say, oh, when I become famous, when I get rich or something else, I'll be so grateful to you, and so on. And they're surprised when I don't even respond to such messages, and they get offended. But that has zero value. Because the future has zero value, just like the past. Only this moment has value. I went further. I allowed myself to feel. I realized that only when approaching death do I begin to feel life, the value of life. That the only way meat, fat, lies, a picture is by fully realizing and feeling the absolute inevitability of death and understanding what death is. Death is when your eyes close and you disappear. You won't see the sunrise, you won't see the sunset, you will never see again.